Welcome back to the SoundWorks Collection. I'm Michael Coleman, and in this episode, we're talking with writer and director Jason Reitman about his new film, Saturday Night. This film takes place at 11:30 p.m. on October 11th, 1975, as a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers changed television forever. Find out what happened behind the scenes in the 90 minutes leading up to the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live. We're joined by writer and director Jason Reitman, music composer Jon Batiste, and music editor Chris Newlin. To start things off, Jon, I'd love to start with you. What has it been like for you to see this film with audiences? How would you describe that experience? Like, what's your sense of the film now?
It holds up. It's great. It holds up. It's, you can't change it. And it's so crazy how we created this thing in this way, which is, super unusual for me. I'd never done a score like this before. And how well it holds up is just like, man, every time people respond to moments in ways that are like clockwork, it's really fine tuned in all of its adventurous approach is very meticulously done as well, which I'm super proud to have been a part of the team.
Jason, I wanted to talk about tone. I mean, this film starts off with just a wonderful introduction to the energy, the anticipation, the stress of what they're trying to pull off. Yeah. How did you guys kind of land where you did with the opening with this long shot of the TV monitors? And then musically, I want Chris and Jon to talk about how you guys arrived at that first cue into the oneer, into the studio entrance. Yeah.
Something that I discussed with every partner on this film was that we wanted the movie to just drop the audience into the location and into the story. That most movies give you this soft landing where they introduce you to the main character, and they do that through every form of storytelling. Even the music is basically saying, we're beginning a movie. We want to let you in on what it's going to sound like, what it's going to feel like. And this movie never does that. This movie, right from the beginning, in every way, is saying, we're dropping you in. We're not introducing you to anybody. And you're going to have to pick this up as you go along. And the music doesn't have an introduction. The music just starts and you're in it. And your heart rate's up, and there's movies from the 1970s that I've always loved that do this, particularly Michael Ritchie's films and Robert Altman's films. They just drop you in, and you have to start to wander around and figure out who these characters are and what they're doing. And musically, we wanted the same thing. Is like your heart goes to 160 beats a minute from moment one.
I love the contrast that, Jon, you came up with in terms of your percussion tracks and just the overall energy that hits and the kind of the colors and textures that you create. How did you think that this first cue introducing the world, sonically what you were doing, why did it make sense?
Sonically, I remember having the notion that the music has to blend into the street sounds and the car horns in New York City and all the elements of environment and sound from that environment, right? And then I started to think about that in terms of the overall score, and it was like, oh, the score is also sound design. And the score functions in a way that's both its emotional underpin, and it also is accent, and it also is this form of creating texture that doesn't necessarily have to be melodic or thematic, but has to tie into all of the themes that you're going to hear over and over. So that first scene really sort of was a litmus test in every aspect of what the score would be throughout the whole movie. The first scene, you get every version of what the score does functionally in the movie. So if it works here, then it can work throughout.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned the car horns, because I was like, they're in rhythm, they're in time. They almost seem like they're in pitch at moments. I think, I don't know if that was intentional, but it definitely worked. Chris, what can you say just about knowing that Jon and Jason, are coming at you with, a lot of great material, and you have to find how it fits in? How did you guys spot this first scene?
I mean, yeah, there was a ton of great material. I mean, Jon and Jason came up with some amazing stuff on set, which we'll obviously talk about a little more, I'm sure. But having all that material at our hands, essentially, when we were temping the film, a lot of that stuff became the final score. We were temping with our final score, and having that was insanely great. The stuff Jon created is so good. And my job was just trying to maintain the integrity of what he created and help tell the story as best we could.
Jon, do you remember there was a Fela Kuti track that actually had what sounded like car horns? There was this one Fela Kuti track, and I remember playing for you, and I was like, I think like the trumpets, I didn't even know what kind of horn it was, but I was like, these sound like car horns. It feels like we're in New York City right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to get too inside baseball, but car
I think this is the
horns
one
are,
podcast where you can go totally
Let's go.
inside baseball. Like this is like inside.
okay, great. I love it. Okay, so car horns, if you listen to them, they're built with the interval of a second, a ninth, and a seventh. So that's a second. Seventh. That's a seventh. A ninth. There's going to be some variation of that. I don't know why, but that's how it is manufactured. So when Jason played me this cut, I remember must have been like Chris, you probably remember too, like a week later, we came back to the set with two trumpets who both play in the Saturday Night Live band today. Grace Fox and Summer Camargo. And throughout the score, you'll hear not only just the horns in the first scene, but trumpets that are in those intervals as accents and as themes throughout the score. So it was very intentional, but I remember that cut, Jason, because it led us to bring in a horn section to the set.
You are invited to a new variety spectacular featuring a parade of comedy and musical acts ripped from the charts. Jesus Christ. Where do they unearth such a cavalcade of talent? Hey, man, you okay?
Maybe ask me again in 90 minutes.
Why? What happens in 90 minutes?
We go live.
Oh, wow. Far out, man. Congrats. Miss,
Thank
show?
you.
Hey, wait, if it's live, then why the hell are you down here? Pre-show?
I'm
Fuck's sake.
waiting for... It's 10 o'clock, Andy. Here, come on.
Where do I park?
You are invited to a new variety
You
spectacular.
can just pick another one, Mrs. Hoffman.
You like my musical acts?
Very out, Andy. This is my favorite suit.
Where do they unearth such a cavalcade of talent?
Jason, how did that influence? I mean, once we get into this first oneer shot, I just wrote down like the guitar rhythm is fantastic, the horn hits, it's funky, and then you have this break with the llama with Andy, and 85 minutes of showtime. I feel like, does the music match the blocking, or like how do they play against each other in terms of the rhythm and pacing?
It's a great question, and I think it really gets to exactly how we made this movie. So I'm going to go a little macro for a second, if you don't mind. One thing I always loved about Saturday Night Live, the TV show, is that they start on Tuesday with nothing, and by Saturday they have a complete show. This is something that I inherently loved as a kid, but didn't know exactly why. But over the course of my life, I realized more and more this is a kind of creation that I'm drawn to, that I want to be thrown in with artists and to feel as though we're creating something in real time. And the struggle with that with filmmaking, of course, is that filmmaking is incredibly rehearsed and practiced, that the only way to get 100 people on the day to do the same thing is to have meticulous notes and have gone through everything you're going to do. There's safety inspections. There's costumes need to be created. You need to know how much food you need for how many people are going to be. Like, everything is planned out. So to get to set and to still be in an environment that feels alive, where you're creating in real time, is actually really difficult, because you were going against the machine that is there to actually make it possible for you to make movies. And so something that we were talking about with everybody is, how do we create an environment that provides everything we need to make this film, but feels alive, feels in a way like we are still creating in real time?
That was the feeling. It felt like we were making, it was meta, because it felt like we were making an SNL episode by making the movie about the first SNL episode.
So what kind of magically happened with Jon is that we would play rough cuts for Jon, and then Jon is reacting immediately in real time, like literally watching it edit on a laptop on set, and literally his head swivels. He looks at his band, and he immediately he's calling out notes. He's calling out rhythms. He's mouthing rhythms. He's going to his keyboard, playing an idea, going to the trumpets, and going, like he's bringing it to life. And then it's being recorded. And then the next most important of this part of this process is happening. Chris is looking at something like the oneer and starting to already understand the rhythms of it and going, okay, we need to go high, we need to go low, we need to stop, we need to break, and Jon is providing all those breaks already. Jon already knows, okay, it's going to need to do this, and that. But Chris is now music editing in real time as well. Like Chris, instead of months down the road, is music editing to get us ideas so that we can then shoot to those rhythms. So when you talk about the opening oneer, we shot it once at the very beginning of the shoot. It was our first day of shooting. It was also one of our last days of shooting. Except the last time we shot it, I now had Jon's music with me, and I'm playing it as we're shooting it.
Sounding good, guys. Yeah, okay. All right. Say, we actually worked together before. I sang backup for Belafonte. Catch that? Drink the coconut water. 45. Man is good for you, daughter. 45. Coco got a lot of iron.
For you, Jon, when we get to this, 10:20 at night, we have this introduction of Billy Preston. I mean, I don't know if there's a role that could have been cast any better, but Jon, you were made to play this guy. What was when Jason pitched you the idea? What came out of your mouth?
He said he had two propositions for the movie. One is the score, and one is the role. And you can do one, you can do both, you can do neither. And I was excited because it was like, oh yeah, Billy. I mean, as a musician, you study musicians and you try to embody them anyway. You learn how they play the instrument, how they walk, how they talk, you watch interviews and stuff. So I'd already checked Billy out, like as just a fan of music, as a student of music. And it was just exciting to be able to not only do the score, but to be immersed on the set and then come back afterwards, take the wig off, take the wardrobe off, then go record the score, then come back and then be on the set with the cast. It was actually a dream. That's how I love doing any kind of project. Is if I can immerse myself in it any way, I love that.
Jason, how did you support basically with Stephen Mora with capturing that on set? Was it something that was always live, ready to go, or did you kind of stop production and give Jon that space to do what they needed?
It was interesting because, what Steve, first of all, did on the production sound was extraordinary. There was days where he had up to 58 mics going simultaneously. He had to bring a second mixing board just to actually handle the amount of audio. And he's doing that all live. It speaks to what I was saying before as far as creating a sense of a true live audioscape, so that when you're watching on set, it's not just, okay, here's the two main characters and we'll figure out the rest later. He's creating an audioscape both with all the musical instruments that are mic'd, all the characters that are mic'd, all the mics that are built into the actual set, because it's a 360-degree set, right? All the lighting's built in, all the sound is built in. And so when you're watching it live, he's already creating layers of sound, so when you watch it, it feels like a real room. And then of course, Steve has this history of recording music for film. He did Star is Born, he did Joker, he did La La Land, so this is part of his repertoire. And he knew early on, it was like, we're going to be recording live music on set. And it's not just for the performance. I think oddly, when I watch Jon in the film, his performance of the songs is fantastic, but what's equally important is them tuning up. Like when I talk to Jon about like, hey, can you get the band to like fuck around, but the way the band really fucks around, where they're just screwing around on their instruments before, and it's like boom, 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 like that kind of stuff. And I remember Jon and I had a conversation where I said, you and Janice are the only two people who actually know what you're doing here. Everyone else has never done live television, but Billy Preston and Janice actually are used to it, and this is old for you. and his next take, he was like, what are you bothering me with? It was like so good.
Chris, how do you remember mining some of those moments? I mean, with so many, wide tracks to dig into, how did you guys kind of navigate when you got to the mix stage? How did you find it? How did it go from the stage to the mix for you guys?
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, Steven captured all these great moments, and we had all this little live nuggets. So like a scene like when we first meet Billy Preston, when he's talking to Garrett, that's probably 50-60% production, maybe 40% sync and some other production audio. But then going into these different sessions we had, I was able to mine all this stuff and really build a world that kind of felt like we were just on stage with these musicians the whole time, try to stay out of the way of dialogue, but really make it feel like you're just standing next to the band. Because if you've ever been next to a band who's getting ready to play, they're all playing, none of them shut up. Musicians are constantly playing. So we really wanted to make that just immersive and feel real, so that was really fun to kind of go through and just basically, I built like a band Foley library, if you would, where I just had stuff where it just sounded like, guys tuning up guitars, or, Corey Henry banging on the organ, and really cool stuff. So that was really fun for those moments there. And similarly for like the 17th floor, the writer's room scene, we have Paul Schaefer's character in the corner of the writer's room while all this chaos is going on. Jason, what do we have, like 20 characters? How many characters do we have going on there? And, we tried, like, maybe we put a piece of source music in here. Nothing sustained long enough, like if something was playing on the radio and it didn't really have the emotional beats. And then, like, maybe we try some score in here, and it's such a long scene, and to hit all the moments, everything kind of overstayed its welcome. And I think it was, Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it was Shane's idea. He was like,
Shane Reed, our editor.
Yeah, Shane hit me up on Slack and was like, hey, do we have any, like, just, somebody playing piano, like they're at a party, just having a good time and starting and stopping. And I was like, let me see if I can find something. And, so I started going through these sessions.
Was one of the greatest pianists alive, and
took the words out of my mouth.
And it was someone who literally, if you sit him at a piano, will constantly play like for 24 hours straight.
So it's like always be recording, right? So we had all these great moments of Jon playing, and we put it in, and it brilliantly plays diegetically in the scene, but then also like scores these camera movements, there's story points, and it just kind of blends between sound design, source music and score, and those are some of my favorite moments, and they're super subtle in a way. They're more subliminal than there, but it makes it just feel completely real.
And it's of a language. I think that's the other thing, is that I think we began to realize even more and more, it's like, just go back to Jon, that he's creating the musical heartbeat of the film, and his music establishes the tone of the film. So if you keep returning to the things that he's creating, even sometimes it's like, if it plays, even if a piece we thought was going to go here suddenly goes here, there's a continuity of the artist that it's coming from. And as a result, it begins to sound of one kind. And this is a film, again, that it's not giving you that many footholds to understand exactly what you're watching. So music becomes one of the most important footholds to let you know you were watching something of one kind.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, Jon, I just want to call out, your film American Symphony, from 2023 to me was just a fascinating exploration of your life and your work and your music. And then now seeing you in this relationship, working with Jason on the other side of the camera, and also obviously working on the film, like what do you appreciate about being involved in as a, putting your music composer hat on for film, for, visual? I mean, you've done plenty of stuff with visual arts, but what was unique and different for you with this time around?
Well, the team, everybody's trust in that unspoken chemistry. There's so much that has happened, and we're kind of alluding to it, but I think it's important to note that a lot of this coordination happened just through the natural chemistry that we have. There was not like a bunch of roundtable discussions as to how to figure out this unorthodox process. It was like we just knew that, oh, he was making this to be an accent, and then I'm going to turn this up in the mix because this moment here you made as an accent versus this is score and this is meant to kind of make this moment feel cohesive, or this part is actually supposed to blend with the sound designer, maybe overtake the dialogue, and just all these decisions that in another team, another director, another group of people, it would be a debate or discussion, or something would have to kind of, to see eye to eye on how to do this, there'd have to be so many trial and error moments where this was such a fluid, just I almost don't fully understand how it was so fluid and so anti any process that you would learn about filmmaking. I mean, the first thing Jason told me when we were doing this was, I want the score to sound as if it will never resolve. And if it we know the end of this story, but I just want the score to feel almost like it's broken. And that was one of the first decisions that, for me, it led to percussion, not orchestra. Let's move away from what you would typically hear in those tones and things like that. But in general, I think that was the difference. There's so much intuitive understanding that we were able to do some things in such a short amount of time that I don't think you would be able to do with another team.
That's amazing. One of the scenes I want to call out is when Lauren's introducing to these, the TV executives, and its introduction of Dave Tebbutt with William Dafoe. The music cue in there, the drum beat, and it's like that delay that you guys are introducing to me. It is so cool. I mean, was that the plan, or that you just found a home for that cue?
Again, Jon is creating things as a reaction in real time, and the best way I could say this is, so we're sitting on set, and obviously the traditional way as a director that you receive music is the movie's basically cut. You've sent it to the composer on a click. You're getting back, hey, here's 3 versions of what this could be. And you're like, oh, I kind of like this part of this one, this part of this one. This is not that. This is, we are on set, Jon is watching footage, or we're just having a conversation about what something might feel like. And he's just turning to his band and starting something. And look, and sometimes I'm immediately going, that's amazing. I already am feeling this. But sometimes I'm going, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. And I have to admit, I'm like, maybe he's just screwing around. Maybe this will lead to something. I don't know. But it's fun, whatever. And sometimes in that scenario, my editor, Nathan, would turn to me and go, this is amazing. I'd be like, I don't know. Okay, great. I still don't know where this is going, but okay, cool.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Well, now you know why they put us on at midnight. Hello, everybody. My name is Lorne Michaels. I'm the producer and creator of Saturday Night. We have a wonderful show for you this evening. George Carlin, the great Billy Preston, a film by Albert Brooks, Jim Henson's Muppets. We're excited for tonight because there's never been a television show made for or by the generation that grew up watching television. So, in the words of my dear friend, Che Guevara, this is the revolution.
Viva la revolution!
Yes. Thank you, Che.
Who's with us? Hands up! God will run in the streets!
At one point, Jon picks up a wood block and he starts doing a wood block, just like a very simple, like really slow, like whole notes. And he does this for a while. And I'm just going with it. I'm like, look, I trust the guy. This is going to go somewhere. And Nathan looks at me and he's like, this is amazing. And I was like, okay, Nathan. And then Nate turns around a scene to the woodblock and it's fucking extraordinary. Like, it's so filled with tension, and he starts to bring up the woodblock, and it became the sound of the clock. It became the sound of time. So when you ask about did I understand the purpose of an idea of where something was going to go? Very rarely, I think what made this such an extraordinary process is the amount of trust we all had in each other. There was this thing of like, we know what taste we're going for, and if we keep pulling against each other, we're going to get somewhere amazing. And as a result, Jon is receiving very little direction from me. He's going purely from his heart and his reaction. And then the film is getting a chance, even on set, to react to Jon. And it's something that I had never done before this, but I know somehow I need to do again in the future. What's amazing is I have a video of the moment this happened, because even as it was starting to happen, I knew I was witnessing something special. And I'm just going to tee this up and let Jon talk about it, because he's going to speak about it in ways that I don't know how to talk about it. But there was a rhythmic idea going. And then Jon walked over to the keyboard and started playing something that was from another era of music. And the two ideas played against each other in a way that created tension, and we're telling multiple stories. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to let Jon take it from there.
There's got to be a core idea if you want to make something that is meant to feel broken also be cohesive. There has to be a core idea, like a recurring approach to the brokenness. And for me, that was the moment when I discovered, the approach is to play something that is almost completely wrong, meaning in metric timing is almost completely in another time that doesn't ever correspond to the downbeat of the first meter. But just when you think it's going to fall apart, the beats hit at the same point, and then the cycle starts over again. And that's, a polyrhythm, but it's choosing what's the most obtuse polyrhythm that almost sounds completely avant-garde, like there is no rhythm. And to do that, it means figuring out, okay, what is the bass rhythm? Now, our bass rhythm was already a polyrhythm. So we were already playing the 2 against the 6, which is the African, Afro-Cuban feel that you feel throughout the piece. And then over the top of it, if you go boom 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 boom, so it creates this rolling momentum that is constantly reaching to find a foothold, reaching to get a grip of something solid. And then every so often it touches it, then moves away from it. And that's what you hear at that moment, which is the 2 main themes of the film, which is that minor Baroque. It's I can actually just play it. That and the rhythm, which is the clock, the musical allegory for the clock, are playing at once in their own time. And that was what I would go into whenever there was a moment where there was just this swirl of tension that happened throughout the film.
Was there something that inspired you to find that or think of that, or just were you feeling that just from finding the scene?
It was our conversation. Jason is such you have this thing about the way you describe things. I can feel what the intention is, even if there's no picture. And then when there's a little bit of picture, and then I started this, when we were first on the set and I saw some of the film for the first time, unfinished, that was like, this is like, it's almost like a one shot for 90 minutes. It's like, it's pretty much, it's like movement. Like I understood from our conversation, but then when I saw the visual language, I was like, oh, okay. So those just little seeds that were planted from conversations, from seeing this piece, from us being on the set and feeling the energy and watching the cast, and this cast is so dynamic and the energy. And then Chris and Steve and just their way of just being, yeah, let's go for it. Let's record on the set. Like, we'll make it happen. Like, just the energy of it all continue to inform my approach to composition.
It's interesting, John, what you just said about our conversation and how we work together, because it for the first time, it just hit me that the way that you and I work together reminds me a lot of how I work with Charlize Theron, where, like, I'm a bad poker player. People can read my emotions no matter what I'm feeling. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm down, I'm up. And it just, like, people feel it 20 feet away. I can't hide myself. And when I'm talking to Charlize, it really doesn't matter what I'm saying. She feels me. And what I felt with Jon, and part of this was actually doing this on set and not like in a room later, is when I'm on set, my whole thing is I'm trying to get people to feel me. So if they feel it, they can they don't need my words, which can almost misconstrue. And whenever Jon and I would be talking about something, more than anything, I could feel him. I could see him feeling me. And he would feel whether I was nervous or I had tension or I was happy or I was excited about something, and he would just go, got it. And he would walk away mid-sentence, and I was like, he has it. And that, in a weird way, that's how it worked.
To me, the end of this film with, 8 minutes to showtime, and then Billy leans into nothing from nothing.
Yeah.
It's just like the best payoff. How did you always know that that's where you're going to kind of stick your landing or try to get to? Or how did you arrive at that cue?
But if you don't mind, before I talk about Nothing from Nothing, I want to talk about Chris for a second, because I think for a director like myself, or for a composer like Jon, a lot of our work is about channeling and being in the moment and trying to just get, when you have it, when you're riding the wave, to get as much out of your heart as possible. And as a writer, that's how I feel. When I wake up in the morning and I have it, I know I need to get to the laptop as quickly as possible, because at some point it's going to turn off and I'm going to lose the signal. But while I have the signal, I need to go, and it just starts to come. And it's unfiltered. It's not a finished idea. It's a lot of ideas, and I know it's in the right key, so to speak. But then it requires working with other artists who can see you and know when you're great versus when you're good, and know what's meant for the piece versus what's not. And now I've been able to work over my life with a lot of talented film editors who see the work that I'm doing, understand what I'm trying to say, and as I'm doing it, are able to hone that into a film that makes sense. What Chris did on this film is different than anything I've seen another music editor do, which he's receiving these live ideas from Jon, who was working in real time and creating extraordinary score that I don't think could be done with just alone in a room at a piano with, a quill. And he's receiving these live transmissions from Jon, and he's making sense out of them. I mean that with full respect, Jon, but he's finding the pieces within the live transmission that are that's perfect, and that is exactly what needs to go here. And what he delivered to editorial was, again, a heartbeat that could make this film. And I've never had a more important piece of music editing, and I've never had a kind of relationship that I did with Chris. I've never spent that much time in the music editing room that I did with Chris, talking about these ideas and what they meant, and talking about storytelling, not talking about maybe cut a few frames off this, but really talking about storytelling. And it's very easy for John and I to kind of wax here and not point to how important it is to have an editor who understands what you're trying to say, who can then take what you're trying to say and actually turn it into story.
Chris, when did you know that you've captured Jason's intention and Jon, kind of what he was throwing at you? Because I feel like there's a kind of discovery process, and I think everything Jason just shared to me sounds like you guys found synergy really quickly. But when did you find that synergy, do you think?
I mean, it did happen pretty organically, and having this amazing source material to work with really helped, and it really is such the DNA of what the film is. And you could swap things around, and most of it will work in some way. Like what Jon created here, it was insane. So it was really about sifting through and going, okay, well, that works really well in this scene, but what if we try this thing? And just kind of bouncing ideas off of Jason and seeing what we can do, and touching on what Jon said about the brokenness of the score. A lot of what a music editor does often, and what I've done in the past in major ways, is try to fix things that are broken. It's like, sometimes I'll get things and I'm like, well, this isn't right. Like I have to clearly do this or make this, or it's not hitting picture right. So let me move some things around and try to make everybody look good and all this. And for me, it was really important to not break what was broken in the best ways of this, and it was, we don't want to shave off the rough edges. Like it needs to feel loose and live, and it has this, pulsing, organic nature to it. And you take that away and it'll make the film feel so much more flat, and it doesn't have the same effect. So that was really important to me. It was like, I heard what they were doing and what they came up with, and it was like, okay, let's not break what's broken in the right way. And so finding those things, and then, just trying stuff and building these toolkits of ideas. We had so much audio recorded and so many cool pieces, and, finding ways that me and Nathan Orloff and Shane Reed, our picture editors, could make it malleable and do things, and then coming back with Jon and doing some other stuff on top sometimes. It was just really cool. And just, it was unspoken. It really just was like this telepathic thing between all of us and the entire crew. And I wasn't there, obviously, but from what Gil and Jason wrote on the page to what then was created and shot on set and everything that everyone did on production, it was just like everything just lined up and just fell into place. And I feel like, Jason, you might probably feel that way, but it sure feels that way for me from start to finish. And that goes all the way through with Will Files and Lee Gilmore and David Butler, our sound effects and dialogue team, and Tom Ozanich, our re-recording mixer. Like, having him on this was a joy, and working with him. And, we, in lieu of a traditional score mix, it was like, give us some music pre-dub days so that Tom and I could sit and kind of craft this, soundscape. And having, even though there's bleed on the mics, we had control over things, so we could really spatialize and fill the Atmos mix. And, even though it's not a dense score track wise, and it's not, an 80-piece orchestra or anything, it just feels massive in the theater, and it's driving and it's pulsing, and I'm just so happy with the way that the mix came out. And I just felt a sense of responsibility to shepherd it in every sense of the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Preston.
Right this way, folks. You're in for a real treat.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You gotta have something.
Lawrence, you remember Carl?
Carl? Ooh, Carl, have you ever used one of these before? Not once. You'll pick it up in no time.
You gotta have something if you wanna be with me. Come on, guys, grab a brick. Not trying to be your hero, 'cause that zero is too cold for me.
You cannot imagine the confidence I have as a director knowing that I have Jon as Billy Preston playing Nothing to Nothing at the end of the movie. Like, you can fuck up so much knowing that still it's just like having the ultimate pitcher, waiting in whatever that warm-up cage is called. The days where Jon performed that were the days we had the largest group of people on the set. We had all our background in. So it's not only the 80 actors who worked every day. It's not only the 80 background actors who worked every day, but it's the entire audience. And everyone's in period costume in this 360-degree set. It always felt like you were time traveling when you walked on that set. And every day as a director, you surrender control to somebody else. When you say action, you just surrender. You're like, all right, it's not mine anymore. Like until I say cut, it doesn't belong to me. And on those days, I'm giving it to Jon. And Jon would start playing and the whole place would come alive. And as people on the crew who were like my family, we just turned to each other with joy and go, this is the ending of our movie. This is Jon. And this band that Jon put together of these extraordinary musicians. And the feeling, all I can say is a feeling of overwhelming confidence and joy as I would watch him perform it. And it's that thing that Chris was saying a second ago of, we have too many good options. How the hell are we going to choose? We have too many good options.
Man, that band is, man. Corey Henry on the organ. Pedrito Martinez. This is, these are some of the greatest musicians in the world. And it's on the instrument, it's inarguable. They're like, one of the greats of the tradition of the bata drum. He has the drum. You look to the drum, and his name is on the drum. Pedrito. Like they manufacture the drum with his name on it. So I just was so fortunate to have a band that we were. One of the other great stories about this that just part of our band's lore for the ages is we went to play Coachella in between weeks of being on the set. We play Coachella on the weekends. So we were hot. We were coming in like when we did Nothing from Nothing, we were just, we were burning. It was time to like throw down. So that was one of my favorite things was just the flow of how that band came together. There was the SNL horns that I mentioned earlier. Pedrito, Manny, he brought Manny, who was like this. They play together. It's like a hand in a glove. And then you had Alvin Ford, who plays. He's from New Orleans. He's by everybody's estimation the next great New Orleanian drummer. And I remember when we went to high school together. He was a freshman and I was a junior, and he was already just one of the young guns. So I mean, this is a band of the cream of the crop.
Although I love how nervous they get when it comes to acting. Like Alvin on drumming, you can give him anything and he's like, whatever, he's totally cool. And they're like, all right, now you have a line of dialogue, Alvin. And now they're sweating. Now they're like,
They were good. They slid right into it. I mean, I would have not known. I mean, they had the energy, the vibe. It was all there, especially with costumes. Yeah. Like I said, when I watched that in that audience with Savannah Film Fest, I'm like, this is why we make movies. This is why we celebrate movies, because the art form is so exciting. And I think this film is one we'll continue to go back to. I'm so happy that you guys did all you did. And I thank you guys for your contribution. So thanks for chatting a little bit about it today.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate this. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Many thanks to our guests today, and if you'd like to listen to more conversations from the SoundWorks Collection, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on all major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube. You can also find exclusive daily video clips on our Instagram and TikTok pages, and connect with other creatives around the world through our email industry mailing list at soundworkscollection.com. If you have a story or project that you want to propose for the show, please send us an email at info@soundworkscollection.com. And thanks again for listening.